There we go, recording. So again, yeah, welcome everyone to this month's Net Liverpool. Just a special shout out to our sponsors as well. So normally we do obviously have a really nice venue in Liverpool, and we cover things like catering cost pizzas, and obviously Luce can tell you a little bit more about that, but we usually have a few beers and we socialize a little bit more, and we've got some merchandise as well to give out as well, but that's thanks to TLA and the sponsorship they do. We've also got some JetBrains licenses. So if you are in that tech area and you are doing stuff with Visual Studio and unit testing, .NET Trace, these JetBrains licenses allow you to buy some, well, usually their software can range anywhere from about £50 to £200. The licenses we give away will entitle you to a year's free trial of any of their software. So we're going to be giving that away today, thanks to JetBrains. So it's a really nice giveaway. So if you want to get involved in that, just private message me your email address. We'll do a little raffle at the end of this. And yes, so that's thanks to our sponsors to be able to give away things like that. So if you want, Google JetBrains as well. We are virtual, so hopefully you're all on your computers. And as long as you can pay attention as well, we've got a lot of features and a lot of software there that you can purchase with a license that we're going to be giving away at the end. If I want to also do a shout out to Mini Hack. They're running on the 4th of August, their next meetup, and they're a little more hands-on. So if you want to get involved in hands-on technology and start actually doing some code and being part of a team, this is another great meetup to check out as well. So they've got a meetup page there and a Twitter you can follow, but they've got some great developers on there like John Skeet and stuff, and they've got some great prizes as well. So again, just building up your knowledge, building up that social aspect of it, and go check them out. They're a really good community. And just remember that this session is recorded, just to give Luce the best possible chance to present to you guys and show what she has and her knowledge. I just ask that you obviously put in the chat first, and then we'll unmute later, just so she's got that bit so you can pause and pick up any questions in the chat. But please obviously just watch the language and everything, because this will be recorded and we don't want to edit the video and have to cut things out. Just takes a lot of time, so we do appreciate everyone's everyone's cooperation there, so thank you. So without any more ado, I'll pass you over to Luce, who's going to start us off with NoSQL versus SQL relational databases. Thanks, Luce.
No worries. Right, let me just share my screen. Caution. There we go. Beautiful. So, hey everyone, welcome to my, what I've titled Zero to Document Hero, Intro to MongoDB and .NET. There we go. So I'm Luce. As Josh mentioned, I'm a developer advocate at MongoDB. I'm also a very proud Microsoft MVP for 4 years now. I'm also a Twilio champion. And along the bottom here, you will see my Twitter handle. My DMs are open on Twitter. So if you want to connect afterwards, or you've got any questions, by all means, drop me a message, follow me on Twitter. I'm open to good, healthy, wholesome technical discussions. So we'll start off with talking about the timeline or my journey from relational/SQL to MongoDB. So it started off way back in 2009 when I was at college doing a vocational IT course, and I first started learning about Microsoft SQL. Then in 2010, I went to university, and over the course of the 4 years I was at university, we got taught Oracle SQL. It was a big fat textbook that we had to walk through that Josh may remember, because for those of you who don't know, Josh and I went to uni together. Then in 2015, after I graduated, I got a job at the Japanese IT firm Fujitsu, which is where I first learned about PostgreSQL. That was part of a project I did to make a proof of concept on those Google Glass Android devices that involved storing data about fake criminals. And then Fujitsu was also where I learned about my favorite tech stack in .NET, Xamarin, which, if you've been a long time attendee to this user group, will know that the last time I attended in person, I gave a talk on Xamarin. But because Xamarin is mobile, I learned about SQLite.NET, which back then was the kind of standard, most popular mobile database, essentially. And so, it's always been SQL has kind of been where my journey's taken me over the years. to me, SQL has always been just the standard. In 2017, I also started work at the BBC, where they are a massive user of Amazon, so like AWS, Amazon's web services. And so we did a lot with Amazon's relational database systems, or RDS, which again is a relational database system. Then we come all the way through to document databases, where I started at MongoDB, and that's where we are today. And that's where I got my first real exposure to document databases. So as Josh touched on, I've worked at MongoDB for a whole 8 weeks now. And I've not done much with their products or anything like it before I started. So kind of, as the playwright George Bernard Shaw said, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So for me, I always thought that SQL was kind of the only way. You know, I'd heard document databases mentioned a couple of times, but kind of because you never really saw it anywhere, I just assumed that it was, you know, SQL way or no way. So this talk is very much about the journey I've taken in these past 8 weeks to kind of get my head around document databases, moving over from SQL. And so, you know, it's not just kind of, you know, just that, oh, this is what they are. This is very much is kind of what I've been through in these 8 weeks to learn more about it. And I really have changed my mindset completely. So just to go over the agenda quickly, first we will cover a few bits on documents versus tables, kind of, you know, the differences in the terms and the concepts between relational databases and document databases. Then we'll learn about why document databases such as MongoDB are such a great fit for modern application development. Then we'll talk about how .NET and MongoDB work together and how easy it is to get started, because I always joke I'm an expert beginner. Ask me to do anything complicated, it goes over my head, but I'm good at the beginning. So if something's easy to get started with, I'll normally love it. Then finally, we'll just look at some of it in action and some super cool examples that are kind of out in the wild. So, you know, we'll start with, what is a document? Well, a document is a JSON-like structure. So it's surrounded by curly braces. It uses key value pairs separated by a colon. And so, you know, it looks very familiar. The reason why I say JSON-like is because although it is sort of JSON-like, especially with like MongoDB documents, they're actually something called BSON or binary like JSON. And so they actually support a few more data types than the ones that you'd expect with JSON, which makes it even more powerful. But let's look at a real example. This is all just a theory right now. So this is me, and you're probably thinking, what has a picture of me got in the gym got to do with document databases? And it's because this person stood in the corner right here is my personal trainer. This is Phil. I've been seeing Phil for 4 years now, and one of the things he's been doing for me every week so I can see my progress is sending me lists of the exercises that we do so I can map my progress. And when I'm one of those people who learns a lot by doing. My colleagues that are in this in here will know that one of the most common things I say when asked, do you have any questions in a meeting, is I won't know until I do it. And so I thought, right, what can I do? What kind of, how can I start looking at the data as I know it in a SQL way and start translating it over to MongoDB and document databases? And this is where I thought, actually, this could be a really good project for the data. It might be that Phil wants a app or a website or something where he can track his clients and stuff, or maybe I can track my workouts. And so then I started to map kind of the differences between them and why and where it might come in useful. So first of all, you'd have in relational terms, you'd have a clients table. So, it's got columns and rows, you've got name, number of sessions per week, and a phone number. Fairly straightforward stuff. In document terms, you'd have a JSON-like structure. So here you've got key value pairs. It's all in double quotes with a colon separating them. You've got a mixture of numbers and strings. This underscore ID you see here, this is a mandatory field in every document. If you don't specify one, it will just auto-generate it for you. So you'll always get one, so that, you know, it's flexible in that sense. But, you know, you want to store a bit more than just about the clients themselves. You know, I don't know if anyone else here or knows of anyone who has a PT or, you know, started going to the gym. But one of the things that you always do, and the reason why you might seek out someone like a PT, is that you have goals. When I started, I had goals. So as well as the clients table, you might have goals as well. But with relational databases, the goals will be stored in a separate table because, you know, it's data, you know, it's about a different bit of information. So it gets its own table. You might link the two together with something like a client ID, which matches to the ID in the clients table. But if you wanted to access that data together, you don't have to do joins, and it's already getting a bit more complicated. In document databases, a phrase that I see a lot that I think is quite accurate and catchy is data that is accessed together should be stored together. So in document databases, everything is still in this document. So we've got a clients collection, we've got the info that we saw added before, but we can also add the goals. But one of the great things about document database, and certainly Mongo's BSON, is that it supports arrays. So we can keep the goals in there, but we can have it as an array of strings of all the goals that we've got. So, you know, whether I had 1, 3, 5, or 10 goals, they would all be there. And, you know, and that's already helpful. You're already reducing the need for a join because it's all just in one document. But as I said, one of the things that's happening every week as well is that Phil is texting me the exercises that I did that week. So then you might, in a SQL database or whatever, or Postgres, whatever, you'd have a exercises table. So again, you then gets even more complicated. You've got yet another table, and you've got exercise names, total sets and reps. So, you know, how many times you're doing a certain number of an exercise. But you can already see a flaw with that, which is, well, sets and reps don't mean anything on their own. You know, sets of what? Reps, how many times are you doing those reps? And so another object type that BSON supports and document databases supports is objects. So then we can also add an exercises array of objects where each object has the name of the exercise, the number of sets and reps that you do. So you've already reduced 3 tables down to 1 document. And I just think, you know, that makes life super easy. So then you might have another client. So my friend Chris is who actually introduced me to Phil. But Chris likes privacy and doesn't share a phone number. So in Chris's case, in SQL terms, the phone number was stored as null. But null in SQL is bad. In document databases, you can just not include it. Even though there's a phone number field in the Luce client document, doesn't need to be a phone number for Chris. It will still work. And again, Chris will have goals and exercises that are different to mine, but it all gets stored in the collection, in the document, in Chris's own personal document with the info that she's happy to share. So goals, exercises, and not the phone number. It might be that Chris decides that she wants to share an email, and the email is how she's going to talk to Phil every week. Well, and then that's fine, because, you know, that would then be, well, you know, in SQL terms, I would have a null under the email address because I don't share mine, but I'd have the phone number. So it would just switch around. So it might be that Chris's document has the email field with the value, but not the phone number. And then in my document, you've got the phone number field, but not the email. And that's okay. It doesn't matter that the schemas aren't quite the same. The document can support it. Now, I love this slide from my colleague Lauren. I deliberately left her Twitter handle in from here when I stole this diagram. So if you want to go share some support, please do. But this amazing diagram shows you a mapping kind of SQL terms to the document database terms like we've just talked about. So a row in a table would just be a document. A column would be the field. Then a table, of course, would be a collection. A database is still a database because you just have a database of different collections. Index is still an index, view is still a view. And as we talked about with how you bring all the data from the different tables together, where in SQL you have a join, you don't need it in document databases because you just embed the data. You can embed objects, you can even embed documents. So you can have a document inside document if you want to. And there's a myth about MongoDB that MongoDB doesn't support transactions. Not true. Because of the flexibility and the power of it, and the advantages, you probably don't need transactions, but it doesn't mean it doesn't support them. So as I said, I just really like this document because I just think it's a really clear and concise way of kind of mapping the two together. Because I know for me personally, when I was learning this stuff, it was very much like okay, what's this word? What's this term I know in SQL? What would it be in MongoDB? And you make those connections in your head. It's a bit like when you learn it, like, as again, for me, when I'm learning languages, you make the habit of going, what's the English word, rather than just thinking like that. So yeah, I just think this is a really great slide. So then why MongoDB? Well, we've seen a little bit of it already, and as to what, going through those examples and how much simpler it is. MongoDB document databases make life easier. Ooh, there we go. You've got availability. So thanks to something called replica sets with which has the nodes in it, which all hold the same data. You've got high availability, and it can, if one of the nodes fails, the other ones will pick up the slack, which is brilliant. You've also got flexibility, as you saw. Your document, you don't have to have a schema that sets out, you can if you want to, but you don't have to have a schema that says, oh, every single document has to look the same, like you would with tables in SQL. So you've got the flexibility to add different types of fields, add different fields in. One document in a collection can look totally different to another. As long as it makes sense, you'd want to keep the related data together. But if for whatever reason you decide that you want it to look slightly different for whatever reason, that's okay. It might be that you're storing information about people and at different ages. You might have job history, or you might have schools. That's all different. It doesn't matter. It has that flexibility. It's got vertical scalability. So if you suddenly find that the project that you've got is suddenly getting loads of traffic because you've, made the latest game that's gone viral, you might find that it's getting hit with a lot of traffic. And so you might solve that by going, right, okay, this, traditionally, especially with like SQL, for example, you'd have the server in a data center, and it might be that you give the server more RAM, more CPU, or more hard drive space. And it's the same with MongoDB, you can scale it vertically. But the problem with hardware is that it gets expensive. And so one of the great things with document databases and MongoDB is horizontal scalability. So I mentioned replica sets, which have nodes in them. And so you can replicate those and have them distributed wherever you need to in different regions around the world. You can just have multiple of them. So whether it's around the world or locally, the main thing is that you can have, you can multiply it and it will scale horizontally. So rather than having, spending money on hardware, it will scale outwards by just having more of them. And, that's really great when it comes to that high availability that you'll want, especially in production. And my favorite of all, readability. So being a JSON-like document, I find it really easy to read. Plus, because data that's accessed together is stored together, it's all in one document, which means that if you want to have a look at something, you don't need to, say, do lookups in multiple tables like you might do in something like SQL Server Management Studio if you're using Microsoft SQL, or PG Admin if you're using Postgres, whatever. It's all just, you just call the document and it's nice and easy to read. And I just really like that. Anything, as I said, I'm an expert beginner. Anything that's going to make my life easy, I'm happy to do. But now I want to talk about something called Atlas. And I don't mean a map or the mythological god, although I do believe that the product that I'm about to talk about is named after the god. But no, what I want to talk about is MongoDB Atlas. So MongoDB Atlas is our database as a service in the cloud, which means all those advantages that we talked about in the last couple of slides, it's all handled for you automatically. You get all the benefits of the cloud with the, you don't have to worry about the vertical scaling, that's someone else's problem. It will automatically scale horizontally for you as well. And the availability, if anything goes wrong, it will automatically bring it back up for you. And it's just, it's really great. And so this is just a screenshot from what Atlas looks like. You can see that you've got different bits of information here, but yeah, the idea is that you can do loads of stuff with it. You can manage it. You can manage network access. You can do loads of stuff with it. So if you create a database in Atlas, like you can see here, it will give you this option. So if we go ahead and play this now, you'll see that you can click build a database. That will then go ahead and give you options. So once per project, you can actually create a free cluster. So if you want to try this out without paying for it, go for it. It's completely free. We support all 3 of the main cloud providers, as well as the different regions. So you can pick the region that's closest to you or your customers that works for you. And you can see it supports all the regions that you'd expect. We've actually started to bring out recently multi-cloud provider support, which means that you can, I think it's at certain levels of cluster tier and up, but it supports, as I said, it supports multi-cloud provider deployment, which means that you can pick the regions that it's going to. So you also get multi-region support. So if you want to maybe have read only kind of databases somewhere closer to where your users might be around the world, that's okay. And then you go ahead and create the cluster, and it takes a few minutes. So then we get an excuse for a good old-fashioned SpongeBob meme. I don't know if anyone could hear that, but yes, it's just good old SpongeBob a few moments later, because it takes a few minutes. But once it's deployed and you've picked the cluster tier that you want, and you specified, the 1 or more cloud providers or regions that you want, you're then met with this screen. So this is your cluster. The default name is cluster 0. You can change it at creation time if you want to, but you don't have to. And so now we've got this cluster, but it's saying it's paused. It's never even had any access. So once you get to this point, if you just want to try it out, or you just want to test your connections, you're not worried about any data at this point, as in creating your own, you can go ahead and load a sample data set. So if you click those ellipses there, you can click load sample data set, and in 2 or 3 clicks, it will go ahead and start in a few minutes loading that sample data set. So again, if we're patient with old SpongeBob,
a few moments later,
then you end up with this. So as you can see, there's actually information on this cluster now showing that it's been connected to recently, which is great. You now got a sample data set, and we can actually have a look at what this looks like, what you get out of the box with this sample data set. So if I switch over to a browser, you can see here that we have our deployment. So we have our cluster, and we've got multiple ways to connect. So the first thing you can do is, if you want to look in the browser, is click Browse Collections. So that will take you in here, and you can see the data. So all these ones that are prefixed with sample are all the sample data sets. So you've got ones on Airbnb reviews. So this is all, you get a lot of information with this. Look, the number of fields that you get, and there's another 14 here as well. There's analytics, there's geospatial, MFlix is all about movies. You've got restaurants, supplies, which is sales, training, which is about aeroplanes, I think. But yeah, the idea is you get very different the sample data set comes with lots of different collections of documents that all, have different types of data or serve a different purpose, so that you can really, try it out depending on what you think your, data might look like. If it's very similar to this, that's okay. You can just pick a sample that works for you. So that's browsing a collection from the browser. But you've got other ways. You've also got this magical connect button. So the first time you click connect button on your cluster, it will actually take you through this first step, which is connection security. So that's just setting up the database user to access it. And also you've got the option to allow access to anybody's IP or your own or a specific set. So you automatically get security out of the box. Then you get these options here. So you can connect with the Mongo shell, which is the command line interface / terminal tool. And so you can automatically get a connection string here that you can copy and paste into your terminal, and it will connect it for you straight away. Or you've got Compass. So Compass is the MongoDB GUI. And so if we go, I've got Compass here, so I can show you it. So this is Compass, and we can, it's a GUI, so you can pass in a connection with new connection. I connected to this earlier just to make sure it worked. So we can just go ahead and click connect. But automatically, there we go. It's loaded our cluster with that sample data set that we loaded. So again, we've got a new place to browse the data. So we can look at it locally. You've got the different sample data. You know, it's really, really useful. And you can even see things about performance. Oh, there we go. But yes, you know, you get access to it. And as well as that, of course, you also get the shell built in, which also is very clever. So as I said, you know, the shell is our command line interface tool, but it's actually built into Compass as well. But you don't need your connection string because you're already connected. As soon as you open the shell, it's already connected for you. So we could even do like just use Airbnb. And then we could say like database dot, what ones have we got? We're in Airbnb, so what have we got? We've got listings and reviews. So listings and reviews dot find, and we can just leave it empty, so it'll just get one back for us. There we go. So it's just got one at random for us. But yeah, that was all available to you right there in one application. So you can either, you know, use the GUI or you can use the shell if you want to. Obviously, you can use your terminal as well, but I just really like that it's built into Compass. And you can do other cool things as well. So this shows you the documents, but a topic which is way too it's much quite detailed and is almost deserves a talk of its own is aggregation. So with MongoDB aggregation, it's a bit like a conveyor belt. So you imagine like a factory. So you come in with some info, it might, like in the first stage, it might do something with it. And then that will spit out, you know, the changes applied to it, and then it can do, you know, carry on like that. So you can do some quite powerful things with it. So you can, you know, say count the number of documents at this stage. Yeah, there's loads of things that you can do with it. I said it's I can share with you later some great places to learn more about aggregation framework, but it's also built into Compass. So you can do more than just view the documents. You can also look at your schema and get suggestions for improvements. You can see the indices that are applied and validation rules. So that's Compass. Let's go back to my browser. There we go. So the GUI is an option, and obviously Compass also comes with the shell built in. Or there's another option that's not even listed here, which if we you could just grab your connection string from this application connection, but in preview at the moment is actually a Visual Studio Code extension for MongoDB. So you just get a leaf, you can connect. So I'm already connected to it, but yeah, you can see you get, let me zoom in a bit. We're already connected, but you get access to the same data. You can browse it if you want to, or you can what's called create a playground. So what the playground does is, let's just hide this for now, is it allows you to basically play literally a playground. So you can select the database to use. You can drop all the data first if you want to, start inserting some random data or not. Yeah, you can just start doing things with it if you just want to sort of query the data and see what would happen from this playground. As I said, that's in preview, but it's still pretty snazzy for something in preview. And of course, you've got the good old-fashioned connection if you just did it from your application. So that's what we'll talk about now. So let's talk about .NET with MongoDB. So this is the NuGet.org website. So, NuGet, of course, is the package manager for .NET. It's built into Visual Studio, but just for, references, I just put this screenshot here from the website. So MongoDB has a C# driver. The main one is this MongoDB.driver that also has the core and BSON in as part of it, but you can also download it separately. But if you look, it's got 50.2, 51.9, and 54.2 million downloads. So, 160 million downloads isn't bad, especially if you look further down. This is the legacy driver that had 6.2 million downloads. So between the two versions of the driver that we've released, you've got well over nearly 170 million downloads of the packages, which shows you that it's, it is a competitive option, and that, document databases, SQL doesn't have to be the only way. So let's have a look at the project. So, we like .NET and .NET Core as it is for now, although obviously .NET 5 eventually is probably the most common project type. So this web API example is a very simple example with basic endpoints that call to the database. So because it's a .NET Core web API project, it comes with Swagger out the box. Don't worry, I don't expect you to read this. We are going to have a look at it properly. So if we go into my terminal, here we have, here's what I prepared earlier with it ready and waiting. So let's just do some, there we go. You're about to see it now because the share is in the way. But if we just do .NET run, we'll be able to spin this up and get it going. So that's running now on 5001. So if we go to the browser here and do a new tab, we'll go to HTTPS localhost 5001. Nope, got it wrong. Probably put a typo in it. Yes, I did, I think. All right.
I think you've got to add the swagger.ui at the end, Luce.
Oh yeah, it auto fixed it for me earlier. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. See, live demos, everyone. So yeah, so you got Swagger automatically. So you can see the endpoints that have been created for this. So if we went into API games, did try it out and then executed it, we would see that we get back the two games that are already in the database. So that is Uno and Monopoly. So the reason that we've got games as an example is obviously, as most of us have been stuck in lockdown or restrictions of some description for a long time now. And so one of the things I started to do over the pandemic was buy more board games. And so I was like, oh, that's just for a bit of fun, kind of store what games I've bought. So, that's the Swagger endpoint. But because it's it's a web API, we can also access it in different ways. So if we go into Visual Studio Code, I have an extension called Thunder Client, which allows me to do HTTP REST calls if I want to. So we can do a post to our local host, 5001, and then the endpoint, as you saw from Swagger, is API/games. So we can say to it that you accept JSON, because of course, because we're doing a JSON-like document for the document database, we're going to be passing it like JSON essentially. Then we go into the body and we can start to put stuff in. So if we go back to the browser, you'll see that it has, the ID is auto-generated. We don't need to specify that. It's just, zoom in a bit. So name, price, and category. So we'll do name. We'll do Carcassone's a good board game. Carcassonne, there you go. Oh, it has to be in strings. We can do that, and then we can do price, which is a number because it supports different data types. So Carcassonne's maybe $14.99, and then the category would be board game. So we could go ahead and send that. There we go. So we got back a 201 created instantly. So if we go back to Compass now, where we can easily browse our data, actually, is this the best one to do it in? Yeah. We've got this games database. If we have a look at our games collection, there we go. Boom, we have Carcassonne added, just like that. But, you know, that's cool. We know that it works, but how did it do it? Well, let's see. So because, you know, C# is an object-oriented language, one of the things we did was create a game model. So that has ID, name, price, and category, which maps to the fields that we saw in the document. And so, and again, as I mentioned, there's an object ID type for the ID. So because we're using the MongoDB BSON using statement at the top, yeah, we've got it's all part of the MongoDB driver. We have access to it. So we've got our ID, we've got our name, then we've got, you know, price, which is a decimal, and the category is a string. So, you know, now we've got an object that we can start using in our code, which, you know, takes advantage of why we like object-oriented languages. We also have a game service class, which is what connects to the database and then gives us the methods that we use to interact with the database. So in the constructor here, we create a new Mongo client and passing it in our connection string from app settings. We then get the database by asking for the database name. And then we have a previously declared but not initialized collection of games. And we can just pass it in that game type that we created and say, go and get that games collection. So what that will do is it will create a collection of that type of game in that games collection, 3 lines of code, and we've already got access to our database and collections. Sweet. But how do we do the, you know, the CRUD, you know, in create, read, update, delete, which is kind of the standard, you know, functions that you do with databases. So create's pretty simple. You just pass in a game. It will then just do insert one and you pass it the game. It's called insert one because you can also insert many. So, you know, it's just powerful. And then, yeah, it returns the game in case you want to do any logging. Read, you can read all the games. So again, this is just 1 line of code, which is great. It's creating a list of games and it's just saying, find the games and convert them to a list. That game to true function in the middle is just because we're not doing any filtering at this point. We're just saying true, so that, you know, a bit like while true. It's just getting us everything. You can also read one by specifying the ID. It will then go and find it by returning the first result it gets, where the game ID matches the ID that you passed in. Again, beautifully one-liner, updates the same. This one, though, obviously slightly more complicated because you're updating. So you pass it in the ID of the document you want to update. You then also pass in the updated game object that you want to update it with. Then it goes ahead and replaces that one document that matches that ID with the game model that you passed in. And, you know, even though we passed it the game object itself, you know, the great thing with the driver and the package is that it's able to convert those into the fields for you. And so it will just go ahead and convert that object automatically for you without any work. Delete, you can delete by object if you want to. So you can pass in the game. It will then get the ID of the game from the game you passed in and find that game in your collection with the matching ID and delete it. Or you can simplify it and just pass it in the ID. Again, all 1 line of code, really straightforward. Yeah, as I say, I really like easy. So 1 line of code works for me. You can see it's delete one, a bit like the replace one and find. You know, you can do many if you want to. And so one is just specifying that you're changing one of them. So that's cool. But let's see a slightly more complicated example. So this application uses the mflick sample data that we saw because it comes from the data set that you can load to your cluster. This is available to any cluster that you create in Atlas, which is cool. So this is what it looks like. It's kind of like a IMDb clone a little bit. But let's have a look. So if we stop the other application that we're running, and then how can I change tabs when this is in the way? No, can I hide it? Go away. Apparently not. Okay. All right, we'll just do a. Let me just go into the project and I'll zoom in. It's called. There we go. We just zoom in. I'll explain the strange name in a minute, but if we just do .NET run on this, it will spin it up. And again, it's just a simple .NET, MVC project, so it's nice and simple to do. So if we go back to the browser, we have this. We can just take that off, make it 5,000 because it's not secure. So it's just HTTP. And there we go. We have the MFlix database. You can see here it's got images, it's got the title, rating, 2 stars in it. Interestingly, you'll see here that some of them say image failed to load. And you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't sound good. But actually, it's fine. The reason that it's there is because it's a sample data set. It's showing you that if some info is missing, it still works. So I had a look at this data, and it turns out that there's a field called poster that generates these images. And deliberately for these entries, they don't have the poster. But because the schema is flexible, the document schema can be flexible and can have missing fields. It's fine. It just doesn't load the image. But yeah, you can go into it and you can see more information. So you get info about the director, the runtime, a plot, IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes ratings, the genre tags that you can then search by, and again, the cast that you can also search by. So quite, sort of straightforward but complex example with lots of stuff going on. And all this code actually, amazingly, is available on GitHub, and it's got loads of comments in it. And you're probably thinking, well, why has it got a weird name and why has it got loads of comments in it? Well, that's because this whole application was actually made using, following a course I took on MongoDB University. So MongoDB University is our free online learning platform. It's got a mixture of labs, quizzes, and video content. If you've done Microsoft Learn, it reminds me a lot of that because, again, that's got, video content, labs, quizzes to check your knowledge. And just like Microsoft Learn, MongoDB University also has learning paths. So I don't think it's got quite as many as Microsoft Learn, but, if you're not quite sure where to start, the learning paths will just point you in the right direction. But yeah, I just thought it's really great that I was able to create a sample so easily following a university course. And, it's got hundreds of hours of content, all completely free. So I just love it as much as I love Microsoft Learn. But another product I want to talk to you about is intended for mobile, and that is called Realm. So MongoDB Realm is our mobile database as a sort of cloud as a service. So the idea is that you have your your different mobile applications on different platforms, and they have local databases on them. They have Realm databases locally, but it also accesses Atlas, which is the, as we saw before, Atlas is where your databases are stored on the cloud with all your data in them, which means that if you've got an existing product or project that you're trying to migrate over to have mobile support as well, so it might be that you've got a website and you want to move away from just having like a PWA and actually having a app, you don't need to have a whole new cluster and migrate the data over, anything like that. Realm will just point to that Atlas cluster and you'll have access to all that data. But, one of the downsides with mobile deployment and mobile apps, for example, is network connectivity. I can't remember the last time I took a train journey of a significant length and had consistent signal the whole way. So this is where the advantage of Realm comes in. Because the databases are stored locally on the phone, if you're offline, that's okay. the data will be stored in those local databases. And then, as you can see here in the middle, we have MongoDB Realm Sync. So this automatically takes care of the online-offline sync for you. So, you don't need to worry about connectivity in your app. You don't have to write any of the code to handle the networking or making sure that, both versions in the cloud and the local database are the same and up to date. It handles it all for you. You don't need to worry about it. It will just do it. It also supports, you can see here, things like authentication. So you can have users, the sync, triggers, functions, you can do schema rules, you can control who has access to what data. So, especially when it comes to things like admin users, you might want to differentiate between an admin user and a normal user. And, I really like that. But, of course, you can see it supports iOS and Android. But because it also supports .NET, it also has .NET support for mobile, which means that my favorite technology stack, and I'm even going to do a chair dance because it makes me happy, is Xamarin. And it supports Xamarin, which is wonderful. So one of the apps you can make is a task tracker app. And this app was actually created following the Getting Started with Realm tutorial on our website, Docs website, which is great. So you can go through it yourself if you want to. It will get you set up with the Atlas cluster, set up the Realm backend, and then also talk you through creating the front end and linking the front end to the back end. So then you end up with a task tracker app. And that's great. I think I did this, it doesn't even take long to do this tutorial either. I think I did it on a live stream a month or so ago, and I think including stopping to chat to people on stream, it took me about an hour and a half. So, it's really easy to do. But let's not talk about it. Let's see it in action. So if we go our Visual Studio, wants to load, there you go. We have the app ready and waiting. So it is a Xamarin Forms project. So you've got all the different pages for the different steps that you would do, and it's code behind. So you can go in here, you can set different bits up. So it's saying, when you, so I think of a good example, add a task, create a new task, there we go. So you have a realm object that you can create, because again, obviously it's all object orientated. You have this realm object you can create, and that goes ahead and does a write for you, and you're saying add this new task. So, it's pretty good. So it's well worth taking this this tutorial if you want to learn more about it. So I won't go into it too much because it takes away the fun of you being able to do it, but we'll see it in action and what the end result is. So if we just go ahead and click play on this, is it doing it? Can't even tell because the share menu is in the way.
F5 work.
Okay, so that's going to run on simulator. So we'll wait for that to load, because obviously I'm streaming my screen as well, aren't I? So it's connecting to the internet. So just give it a minute. There we go. So we are here with this screen. So we can log in or create a new account. So we can do, we can log in. I think that's my login. Nope. Okay, never mind. We'll do create a new account. But this is what's cool. It's letting you already create users. As we saw, it can handle authentication things. So it can also do user control. So we can do like fake email at email.com. Click create a new account. So go ahead. There we go, and it will create the account. So it will bring in your projects. I didn't write the UI, but it needs some improvement, so don't blame me for the color clashing. But it brings in the list of your project. You can go into the project and you can see a list of your tasks. If you already had one, it would appear here, so we can show you what that looks like. So we've got give a great talk. We go back and we log in. Go into the project. There you go, it's already there. And we can even change the status of it from open to in progress. save that. So that's, you know, in a mobile app with Realm. But as I said, it's stored in Atlas. So what happens if we actually have a look in Atlas at the data? Are we going to see it? In theory, yeah. So if we switch to, don't ask me, I have too many organizations, but if we switch to this organization, this is where the project lives. So we're going to task tracker. We've got data here. You can see it was it's been accessed recently. And if we browse the collections, we should have a task. So there you go. Give a great talk is in progress. Woo! But you also saw me create new users. So if we go into Realm, Realm will show you that it's, you know, it's had 3 user requests. It'll show you what's going on. So if we click on it and go into it, it will show you activity. It shows you that it's linked. You can't see it very well here, but it will show you that it's linked to cluster 0. Obviously, the downside of not giving your clusters unique names is that you can't tell, but it is linked and we've got a collection. So we've already seen the data being added, but we've also got our users here. So there's that fake email, email.com that we created, all there done in the email app from, you know, code that's not complicated at all. It's wonderful. So that's cool. You know, we've got our different providers here. And as I said, you can do stuff around schemas and authentication, so you can control it so that anyone can access your data. You can even turn on support for different social providers. I mean, you won't see me turning on Facebook login to any of my apps anytime soon, but it is an option. Of course, for here, we've just got email and password. Another cool thing as well is charts. So charts allows you to visualize your data on top of it. So we could activate the data and go ahead and build a chart. I don't quite know what we'll be tracking exactly, but just wait for it to load. Takes about a minute, but yeah, we can come back to that. But charts is cool because it automatically allows you to point a chart at your data, and then you can pick what kind of chart you want, and it'll just do it for you. You know, I know for sort of front end projects, a lot of the time when you've got sort of JavaScript mixed in, you might use something like D3. But that, you know, that might, you know, it gets more complicated. Charts, it just does it for you. So we can add a chart, so we can zoom in. We can pick what type of chart we want. So we might want a circular chart of how many to do. Oh, choose a data source, that's why. There we go. All right, let's create a new dashboard for this. I've got dashboards for other things I do, so let's go back and create a dashboard. Add a dashboard, we'll call it productivity. Let's see how productive I've been. So we can create the dashboard. Now the chart, and then we should be able to see our, choose a data source. Oh, so what's that only showing movies? Oh, okay, well, I'll worry about that later. But yeah, you can bring in the data source anyway, and then it brings in all the fields. You can drag the fields you want to look at and start to create charts out of it. So, you know, that's super powerful, just like that. As you saw, you get like, you know, a certain amount of data for free. I think it was 100 megabytes or something quite high. So, you know, that's great. And, you know, I like the fact that you can create this chart so easily, because you can start to map data. You can see all sorts of interesting things about the users or the data. So let's go back to PowerPoint. So you've seen the task tracker. Cool. Ooh, didn't mean to do that. There we go. So now let's look at some MongoDB in action stuff. So this is just some cool examples, not by me. So this picture here is from a Unity game and a talk given recently at our annual conference called .live. by my colleague Nick. Now, this Unity game is obviously a shooter, but MongoDB and databases, in general, pair really well with games because, you've got information that you might want to persist through between playthroughs. So here you've got high score, you've got some different weapon types. So if you close the game and reopen it, you might want it to, still be in the same place that you were at. You don't want to lose all the cool weapons that you've earned or your score you're really proud of, but you can't always control interruptions. So that's cool. But obviously that's, quite sort of almost not simple, but that's sort of quite a high level example. But we can also look at some like bigger examples of it being used in the real world. So if we go over now to my trusty browser, here is one that I really like because it seems very relevant at the moment with COVID, is that those of you that live based in the UK will know that Department for Work and Pensions is our governmental department that handles benefits and stuff and unemployment, as well as, doesn't do tax, but it, pensions and all things related to that. And one of the benefits available to UK-based people if they don't, are out of work is universal credit. But you imagine when the pandemic hit in March last year, a lot of sectors and companies shut down or people were furloughed and they weren't able to work, which means that the universal credit, which is kind of the benefit that's paid out every month to support you, became really, really important. It's not just sort of this game doesn't work, how annoying, I'll go play something else. Like, this is really people's lives here. And so, I think it's great. And we've been partnering with DWP, as we call them, since 2013. And so actually, even though if you don't know it, underneath the Universal Credit Platform, their database of choice is MongoDB. So this blog post is just talking about the impact of the pandemic. It's talking about the number of people it helps, the amount of money it distributes. As it says here, on the 23rd of March, it had a sudden increase in demand overnight because as the pandemic hit, suddenly, industries had ground to a halt and people were left unable to work or without a job. But when something like this, people are vulnerable when they're worrying about money or haven't got an income. And so it's not the kind of system that you want to drop off. It needs to be available all the time. So it needs to be able to adjust. And so, this blog post just talks about how it adapted, and there's some good stats further on. That they were worried that the traffic would be 10 times more than usual and that the system might fail, but that's not an option. Failure has real life consequences because it's a difference between rent or feeding family. And so, you can see the stats here, the number of people on universal credit shot up. So it was really important that the database underneath was able to scale, and that's where Mongo comes in. Further down, there's a really great diagram here. So there was 8.5 billion unique data objects, 8 clusters, which is the groups of, the clusters and nodes and things. So there's 8 of those distributed or created to handle it, 110 terabytes of compressed data, 5 terabytes of indexes just to help with querying, 900 virtual CPUs and 6 terabytes of memory. So that's crazy. This sudden increased capacity, but it was able to handle it. It was able to handle 100,000 claims in a single day while still paying people on time. Universal credit has a bad rep, so not everyone will argue they get paid on time. But handle 110,000 new claims and over 202 million claim inquiries in a day. And there you go, on-time payment rate of over 88%. So, that's just an example of how Mongo is used in the real world for something that matters, and how document databases really are used by people who want to know these things. I'm going to just do this because I can't see the tabs. Hang on. So the next example I want to talk about is moving away from real world, but moving into like manufacturing. Let me just make it the right size. There we go. So this is talking about Toyota. So again, these I'll share links for all of these in a gist at the end so that you can read them if you want to. but it's just talking about Toyota smart factories. So they have like automated forklifts that do all the things that don't, the less complicated things that don't require human support. And they use MongoDB to store all the data about, the locations, just any information they need to know, because they need a lot of like data points, for example, like about locations, so they don't crash into anything. And so they talk here about how they've got 10,000 warehouse trucks, and it's just going through how they use MongoDB Atlas, the cloud service, and it runs on, they've chosen Azure as their partner. So again, .NET, Microsoft Azure tend to go quite well together. So it just shows that, this is an option. And it's just talking about how easy it is to use, easy and work with quickly, which I agree. The thing I like about document databases is that they're so, simple to get started with, and you can focus on the deployment side rather than the complex parts. So as it says here, you can spend time on building business value rather than data modeling, because the schema is flexible. You don't need to worry about the modeling it to start with. It can change shape, which for any business is valuable, because even as hobbyists, when we're making a project, we might have an idea in our head of what the data looks like, but it doesn't mean that we're right at the beginning. So things might change over time and you have to adapt for that. And the fact that it's flexible means that you can, you don't need to worry about it. So here it just runs through some of the criteria that they looked at for why they used MongoDB, or which data platform they used, and then ended up with MongoDB. So there's performance, as we talked about, scalability. You've also got, the automatic maintenance, so they can focus on the apps rather than the database administration. Security, because, MongoDB databases are very secure. Can host it in whichever regions work for them. Like I said, latency sensitive operations, you want to be as close as possible because you don't want long read-write times. Automatic backups also means automatic recovery, which is great. Cloud agnostic, developer friendly, and it's using best practices. So it's all those things that they were looking for. And as I talk about in the video further up, MongoDB, was the winner, and MongoDB University that I've already talked about was one of the reasons why, and that's great. Always smile and always give us the best support. I can't disagree. I've worked there for 8 weeks and it's wonderful. The other reason why I like Toyota as an example is I believe Toyota invented Lean, the agile methodology. And as you saw from my SQL timeline, I used to work for Fujitsu, which is another Japanese firm. And they're also a big advocate of Lean, which is all about continuous improvement. So, you're always there having a look at how you can improve efficiency or just, improve in general. And so the fact that a company that invented, Lean is choosing MongoDB also gives me confidence that it is a good choice. And then another one, which I quite like, is all about games, because who doesn't like games? So another client of ours is Sega. So Sega Hardlight is a game studio based here in the UK, and they're responsible for quite a few mobile games, and the ones from Sega anyway. And back in 2018, they essentially said that any projects created from 2018 onwards were going to use MongoDB Atlas under the hood, and that's great. And so there's some examples here of games that are actually using MongoDB that you might not realize. So you've got things like Sonic Dash, Crazy Taxi, City Rush. So as they talk about in this blog post, you want to be able to scale dynamically, because this is the traffic from the Crazy Taxi City Rush launch. Like with lots of new games, when the game comes out, there's lots and lots of interest, the traffic shoots up, but then interest wanes. And so trying to manage that provisioning dynamically and not spending more money on resources than you need to, that can be quite difficult. But thanks to, automatic scaling with like cloud databases, that's okay, it's handled for you. There's other examples as well. You've got, it talks here about supersonic scaling and just, all the advantages as to why it's great. And I just like showing examples, because I just think, that it's all great to learn about a new technology stack, and whether it's there's other document database and NoSQL things out there. MongoDB is not the only one, but it's just nice to see that it is an option, and that us as a document database provider give this as a choice. So it also talks here about Sonic Forces and Kingdom Conquest Dark Empire. Now it's saying it's always on, which means that it needs to be able to scale to handle it as the number of people joining and leaving changes, and that's great. To me, anything that makes your life easier, I'm all for, and that's the benefit of the cloud in general. But it's great to know that even with your databases, you can also have them in the cloud as well. The cloud doesn't just have to be for hosting your website, for example. So I think that's pretty cool. And there's some other examples as well. I'm not allowed to name the companies, but we are used by other companies that make big multiplayer games, or there's even a big finance company based in the UK that's essentially said that for all new projects going forward, MongoDB is the database platform of choice, unless you've got a really strong justification otherwise. But for me personally, I think it's great. If you're at my previous talk on Xamarin that I gave here in 2019, I demoed an app called EmotiPal, which is all about analyzing sentiment in text and also reading emotion on faces. And that's a great app that's eventually is going to end up on the app stores. But one of the things that people have said to me is that, a history might be quite good, because you can have a look at that face looks similar. I don't need to go through uploading a photo or trying to copy what the photo was. The face that I saw at the time, I might try and copy it, but it can be quite difficult, especially because something like EmotiPal is aimed at people on potentially, neurodivergent conditions. So it's not always so easy. So having, the history, they won't have to worry about recreating the face. They might just see, this looks similar, I'll copy that. And for me, document databases is a no-brainer, because it's just so much simpler. Fewer lines of code, easier to query the documents, and with it being JSON-like, it's just so much more readable. So in summary, you've hopefully learned quite a lot today. So you've learned what document databases are and how they look a bit like JSON. The terms that are different between SQL and document databases. The great slide from Lauren with the mapping in it. What MongoDB is, including Atlas and Realm. So obviously Atlas is our cloud database as service, Realm is the mobile database. Learned about what the MongoDB package is and the existence of it and how it can be used. MongoDB University, which is free. Woo! Who doesn't love free learning, right? I always think that anyone who comes to a user group likes to learn. So there's always something that you can get from these things. You also saw some cool examples. None of the cool examples were anything done by me, but it's just cool to think there's probably games and applications and things that we interact with or play with every day that we have no idea is using MongoDB under the hood, or even just uses document databases under the hood. It shows that SQL isn't the only option. And I know for me, when I started hearing about some of these different use cases, it made me realize that, SQL doesn't have to be the only way. Maybe it's what we were taught over the years, because originally, SQL was the way, but it doesn't have to be. And that's what I really like. So thank you. And hopefully, people got a few questions. I'm happy to take them.
Just before we move on to questions, I'm just going to stop the recording, and we'll stop that there. So for anyone watching the YouTube video, just like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our meetups in the future.